can you get beautiful, flat, bright, really colorful colors out of a pen only when they're in crazy colors like this? Stay tuned to find out.
Hello and welcome to Stationery Test Drive, where every week we take fun tools and mundane tools and do anything but the mundane with them. I'm Vishal.
I'm Samir.
This is Minjal.
And today we have the very mundane piece of office stationery that pretty much all of us know and all of us have used, and all of us have either cursed at some point for making it bleed through or that it's dried out. But here we have it, the highlighter. It's the highlight of your week and mine. And it certainly was the highlight of my week this time.
Yeah, this was a completely unexpected pleasure. We picked it up because Luxor is a very, very popular Indian brand, mostly making what most would consider kind of boring office stationery. And we came across this pack of highlighters they were relatively inexpensive.
They're a couple of dollars US. 5 colors, a nice bright pink, a highlighter-y neon yellow, a surprisingly minty green, I must say that. It's warmer than the usual sort of toxic ecto-cooler greens that I've seen before. Yeah, I think a lot of us, I remember the first time I saw a highlighter was in an office. I think I'd gone to my dad's office or something, he had picked me up from school for something and we had to go there to do some work. And I'm like, oh my god, they have color pencils in offices. I didn't realize that adults did this too. Well, it turned out that at least back then in the 80s, highlighters were pretty terrible. You know, they, like I said at the beginning, they dried out, they would bleed, you'd get a photocopied piece of paper and then run the highlighter over it in order to highlight things. And it would just like take the ink with it.
Smudge the carbon on the,
Whereas these have been an absolute pleasure to use. The tips are really, very sharp and they continue to be sharp. Minjal, what about you? How did you think of, what's your experience? As the only one of the three of us, we should add, that was worked in an actual office in a day job with actual office timings.
Share your expertise, Minjal.
Yes.
Show us your trauma.
Yeah. So I remember I last used highlighters when this was when I did my masters. It's been a decade. Yes, like one of us, over here has done their masters, so I will use this opportunity to show off a little. It's not helped me, so that is the thing. But yes, I do have the degree. But that's when, you're supposed to go through some 70, 80, research papers to write one article. And how on earth will you remember if you're not using the highlighter? What is very popular in countries outside of India are obviously the Sharpies, and Stabilo has really good highlighters. But really I've used these and they're like vibrant. They're so much fun to use, and it's more fun to use when you're not, using it to like highlight statements in research papers. The potential of these also, it's not just highlighting. You can actually create art with it. Has been my, conclusion using these highlighters.
Well, we are all about creating art. Should we show some of that art?
Absolutely.
Minjal, why don't you get yours? Because yours, we'll see the journey from MBA highlights to, oh wow,
to trippy Gujarati idioms.
That is bright.
That is, I hope the camera is picking this up. But
so what this roughly translates to is...
please tell us what it is.
This roughly translates to silence is golden. The actual Gujarati saying is na bolvama nav gun, which means, that, there are times when you should just shut up, basically. So, this was, and I actually used it to blend. I used it to blend and, get this really psychedelic, trippy effect, which was so much fun doing.
So it's the pink, the blue, and
The orange. Yeah.
You don't even think that it's only 3 colors. It seems like 50 of them.
Yeah, it mixes so well visually that you lose track of what the original colors are.
It breaks your brain. And speaking of brain breaking things, you've done another one.
Yeah, so neon colors now, again, we see people use them for a lot of graffiti style lettering. And this is just absolutely freehand and no guidelines, no real structure. You just take the pens, one layer, second layer. I mean, I was tempted to do a third layer.
Would you like to do one now?
maybe for the roundup, not right now.
Okay,
but
for the roundup we'll do that.
But the other realization I had was this is cartridge paper, and this is the smooth, maybe cold pressed, hot pressed paper.
One is smooth, one has some tooth to it.
Yeah, correct. So that is the difference. And, the texture, I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but, the texture that you get on the cartridge paper, it just makes the experience so much
there's a certain
gritty.
It lifts off in certain places. It has a nice live edge, as they would say if it was a piece of wood. It feels almost like you're screen printing something, but with, more of a hand. There's a lot to it that's not a mechanical office tool.
Yeah, I mean, on the smooth paper, it's a very clean, very beautiful sort of marker mark. And on this paper, it's almost painterly.
Yeah, that's not something but I was surprised by how liquid these were. And maybe, yes, they're brand new. I'm so used to highlighters being dry. It's just such a, such a thing that, but these are, yeah, sure, get all the jokes out of the way.
We wouldn't want to highlight them.
Yeah. Get us banned from being a nice family-friendly show. Not that was ever in play, let's face it. If you watched any episodes of the show, you know that we are not exactly, family-friendly. But, speaking of things that maybe kids might read, but if you're an older kid...
Are also not family-friendly.
But also not family-friendly. This is my test drive for the week. I'm not really a comic art person, but I enjoy doing the odd random page to see if I can actually put something together. And the highlighters were a great chance for me to use, like last week you saw us use Sumi ink. This is Sumi ink again because it's the kind of thing that I like to use a lot. But the highlighters were a great way for me to get color on the page without too much hassle, but also really lean into the psychedelic nature of it. I did a bit of layering, especially like in the blues, waited for a while, did another pass, and then there's some mixing here, this lovely purple color that you get from the blue and the pink. There you go, we both figured that one out. I didn't really mix these ones up too much because they get they're not really muddy, but they're not as vibrant as that one.
It's a brown. It's not a very pleasing brown.
Yeah, I mean, you're heading almost, it's like a fluorescent Zorn palette, if you want to think of it that way. I think I would gladly use this again, maybe not for something super controlled, but where I don't mind some of the chaos, where I don't mind the kind of the scratchy, grungy, underground comics kind of look. But, you can do something really artistic, and I think, imagine this framed up or, even 5 times the size, that would look amazing, I think.
Yeah.
But Samir, you, I think, did the layering the most of all of us, right?
I think Minjal chose to do a very controlled sort of mixing, which looks lovely. You did some overlapping in kind of patterned ways.
And I love how, I should point out, I love how it mixes with the Sumi ink. Yes. I didn't expect it to look this good.
Yeah,
together.
This looks, printed. It's just fantastic.
And I seem to have gone and mixed everything.
Wow. That is a true test of the highlighters. You've used all the colors, right?
Yeah, I put everything down there.
Multiple times and in layers on top of each other, next to each other.
And sometimes in the wrong order, in that it's obviously better to do a dark color on top of a light color so that you don't mess up the felt tip of the lighter colors. But I might have broken that rule a few times.
I think breaking the rules is a good idea with these. as we said, they're highlighters. They're made for highlighting things on paper, text usually. This is a great artistic use of them. And especially like even there, it's readable. The thing that I love is that bit where all the colors are kind of together.
Yeah.
But you can still read things in there. You can still see that there's an eye, there's a, the lips. Like, I know they're supposed to be just orange, but juxtaposing colors together, they just look redder than red. I thought, wait, where did you find a red? No.
No, it's actually a mixture of the orange, the pink, and then some layering of both.
So yeah, you can do some wonderful things. There's your deeper orange from the orange and the pink.
I mean, this is, again, it's one of those, we've seen this pattern with other things before, which is that what used to be kind of a very scratchy and sometimes disappointing piece of office stationery or school stationery has just improved so much over the years. And we've seen this especially with markers. I mean, these actually remind me a lot of the DOM sketch pens, which were just so much better than we thought they would be.
I think we definitely need to do around roundup time, or at least on our own, something that mixes the DOMs in these.
Yes, because they're very similar in how saturated they are. And this is a great complement in sort of the neon area to those which were much more of the normal sort of palette.
I mean, the neon thing, I quickly leapt to something that's cyberpunk because of, just how neon they were, how nice they were for that kind of thing. There was no question of doing anything else.
Yeah. And I think like we have looked at some of these very reasonable stationery brands from India before. I was actually not too familiar with Luxor. They're kind of ubiquitous in that they're available everywhere.
They're the background noise of the stationery store. You go in and you see a bunch of Luxor things. Maybe not as much as...
And most of the time, it's not even very school or, student heavy stuff. It's usually office things or like very functional things like markers. And I was surprised to find out that they are actually the largest exporter of writing instruments in the country.
Wow.
So...
Okay.
Clearly, there are a lot of people out there with, wanting permanent markers and highlighters.
First of all, with a name like Luxor, I almost thought that they were more exotic. I'm kind of happy to realize that they're Indian and they're not,
So Luxor is also, I believe, a very Steve Jobs kind of a small setup with limited resources. That's how they also started.
That's definitely where they started. I believe it was started by the founder in a small shop in Delhi in 1963 with like 5 employees and 5,000 rupees, which of course 5,000 rupees in 1963, but
was
still
a lot of money.
Not a gigantic amount of money anyway.
No, certainly not to be so ubiquitous so soon, because I always by the 80s they were ubiquitous.
Yeah, because the thing is, from the beginning they very quickly went into manufacturing. It was not like they were in it to just sell stationery. They were manufacturing the first felt tip pens in India by the 1970s, so less than like 5 or 10 years after they started. And they introduced the highlighter in, I believe 1982 or 3, which is just like 3 or 4 years after the highlighter was invented in the UK.
Wow.
So they caught up really
They caught up very quickly. Like they introduced, I think, ball pens and highlighters and sort of manufacturing them locally.
Okay.
In the late 70s and early 80s.
So let's say the market that they capture, obviously, like you said, is the office supplies market. So Luxor is maybe primarily popular in that segment.
I've seen Luxor sign pens. Those were actually pretty nice to use. Artistically,
I think over the years they've expanded a lot. I mean, the Luxor is now, I think, in 120 countries or something like that. But at least in India, their presence on the shelves is certainly more heavily towards the office stationery and sort of...
I mean, this is not office. Let's tell people that nothing that is sold as office stationery is meant only for that use.
I mean, you wish offices were more like this.
And one day when we rule the world, we will mandate that offices have art days like this.
And the Daiso is present whichever country we're living in.
Yes, please see our previous episode about Sumi for that. And you should watch the rest of the stuff that we put out as well. And also follow us at the links on the screen. That are there right now, and please follow Inky Memo, which has a lot more on the website, including now transcripts of some of our earlier episodes. They take a while to get done because there's a lot of work involved in that. as much as making these actual episodes on video. But yeah, if you enjoy maybe reading through these or looking for some kind of specific piece of research or interest, you can look at those. But for all that and more, you can also just continue to subscribe here on YouTube, where we will be doing more test drives every week. Uncommon tools, common tools, office tools, and fun things. We've got some really cheap and cheerful but really great tools coming up. We hope you'll stick around for those. Until then, I'm Vishal.
I'm Samir.
This is Minjal.
And the thing that we didn't come back to was, does it require really, really bright and ridiculous looking colors to get some of the flattest and best and most colorful looking markers that you can get? Seems to be so, because really, other than the Poscas that we used, I don't think we've managed to get such beautifully flat layerings of colors with anything else. So I highly suggest that you look at the Posca video that's on screen. And for other markers that are surprisingly inexpensive and good, look at the video about the Dom sketch pen. Vishal?
Highlight your life.